2021 has ended well for the movie business, even though the clouds of Omicron are now hovering on the horizon. But think of it, in the last few days, you've had three big movies which have definitely brought people back to the halls, whether it's the Spider-Man latest movie or the Matrix latest or even the big hit of 83. Will this now become a habit? Are we on the path where going back to the movies is a natural thing for people? Or will maybe smaller movies and more indie movies fight it out when they come to the OTT platforms faster than earlier? Are people going to be willing to pay the ticket prices? To speak on this, I have a fantastic panel joining me on the show this evening. Kamal Gianchandani, President of the Multiplex Association of India and CEO of PVR Pictures, is with us today. I'm speaking with Kailash Gupta, Chief Financial Officer at INOX Leisure, and Pradeep Dwivedi, the Group CEO and Executive Director at Eros International, also joining us. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us this evening on the India Development Debate. Mr. Gianchandani, let me begin by getting an overview. We had a chance to speak last just before the festive season in Diwali, and I remember you talking about how the big movies will bring people back. Now, you've had 2 or 3 of the big movies that I mentioned, and has that really happened? Have the footfalls come back?
Avanna, thanks for having me on the show, and I think I would at the outset say that the big screen is back in all respects. Sooryavanshi turned out to be a big hit at the box office, and then Spider-Man did unprecedented business. In fact, the advances that we saw with Spider-Man were the second highest ever for the exhibition business. Post that, we've got every week a film releasing, and every month we have at least 2 films which have potential to become a blockbuster at the box office. And all of this is happening with increased ticket prices. So if you look at the exhibition industry as an aggregate, ticket prices are up by about 17-18%. As you know, as big films start to come out, our ability and capacity to increase ticket prices goes up because desire to pay more ticket price is there for big films, and that's happening. So all our revenue cylinders are firing quite well, not just ticket price and admissions and occupancy, but also the F&B revenue. I would, conclude my point by saying that cinema, big screen cinema, is back in all respects. This whole thing that we kept debating throughout the last 18 or 19 months that consumer habits will change or we will have a shortage of films. All of that seems to be incorrect. Those inferences that were drawn seem to be incorrect because all these films which are playing in theaters were conceived and produced pre-COVID, and we see absolutely no change in the customer behavior. People are lapping up all these films in Hollywood, Hindi, and before that we've had Doctor, Manadu, which were 2 big Tamil films, a lot of slew of hits in Punjabi. Meanwhile, Pushpa, which released last week, has also turned out to be a big crosser. So yeah, it's all good. And like I said, cinema screen is back. The big screen is back in all respects.
So let me take a second to just gripe about those high ticket prices you're talking about. And we saw that with the Spider-Man opening weekend. Between 16 to 1800 rupees for some sections of seats in Mumbai with taxes. And the interesting thing is that people did come in to see it. Mr. Gupta, I want your perspective on the seating capacity. You have to keep spaces between patrons when they're sitting in. Is that getting covered up with the higher prices, and will that be sustainable in the next few months? Because with the situation of Omicron developing, we don't know where things will go from here.
Tamanna, around 6 states in the country right now having the 50% capacity restrictions. So what we have tried to do is, one is that the more people are coming to watch the cinema, so that space is filling up. Second part is we try to increase the prices, as Kamal said, and both of them put together and along with the cost cutting measures which we are taking is really sustaining the cinema well. So just to tell you, the last 2 months, after a gap of around 18-19 months, we were cash break even or EBITDA positive. I mean, that gives us a confidence that the cinema is already back and it will continue to prosper.
All right, Mr. Dwivedi, let me come to you. What is your outlook looking like for 2022? Are you worried about restrictions coming back as we speak? Night curfews have returned in a few states. There are concerns about a possible third wave because of Omicron, and while it may lead to milder symptoms, all administration, local, state and centre will want to restrict places where there are crowds, and cinema halls will be a sitting duck in that case.
No, I totally agree with that, Tamanna. I think one of the fundamental shifts that we have seen in the last, I would say, 2 years of pandemic and going into Omicron and what is possibly a wave 3 is just the sheer apprehension on unpredictability of infrastructure being available. I completely agree with Kamal and Kailash when they point out the fact that there is a huge demand that has come back, and this is something that we've all been waiting for as an industry, because just the big screen experience is something that just can't be replicated in any other medium. And I know that films like Tenet, which came between wave 1 and wave 2, there was a whole audience waiting for it. But I think fundamentally the studio ecosystem such as ourselves is reconciled to the fact that this pandemic will perhaps not dissipate in a short measure. I think there will be subsequent waves for which we have to be prepared, and arbitrary lockdowns coming in at short notices may continue to impact the industry. So I think the fundamental construct of the business is one where there is going to be a certain classification of cinema that is ideally suited for big screen and has big budgets backing those films, and they will continue to wait on theaters to open up, like 83 and Sooryavanshi have waited for more than a year and have got fantastic response. But there will also be a significant supply of content moving to the OTT and streaming services, not just ourselves, but pretty much all the other services that are there. I mean, in the middle of the pandemic, even when we as a studio were developing films in some of our subsidiaries, etc., I mean, we ended up placing movies on Netflix, and we have another big launch on, Star Disney Plus today. And that only goes to show that the audience demand is there on both types. But I think the experiences are inherently different. The price points at which the consumer and the content consumption happens are inherently different. And I don't think there is any degree of cannibalization into. I mean, the experience of going out to a cinema with family is something that will always be cherished and people will enjoy. So we don't think, as long as the government permits us to allow that, that will go away anywhere at all. And yet there is this whole new mass of audience that has emerged, which is keen to consume the content on streaming, and we have to cater to that audience as well in a significant way.
Okay, I want to welcome Komal Nahata to the conversation. Komal, great to have you on the show with this fantastic panel. We've been speaking about how great the last few weeks have been for the industry. People are coming back to the movie halls, but then you have this Omicron fear on the horizon as well. What is your take on how this will pan out in 2022? Right now, you had people coming out because they were good movies after a long time and they could go out. Do you think that that will persist no matter what the movie is, or will this be just for blockbusters, that people will come out, pay big ticket prices and flock to cinema halls?
As of now, we are seeing that people are coming to the cinemas for event films. I think this will continue for a couple of more weeks or months, depending on how the fear factor is considered. If the Omicron variant is not as dangerous as it is being made out to be, then I think people will come out for smaller films also. Otherwise, they will wait for the reports, and only if they are convinced that the reports are good, that it's going to be a blockbuster or a hit film, they will venture out of their homes. In other words, what people are now thinking about is, if it is worth our while, and by worth our while, I mean if it is worth the effort or worth the risk, let's put it that way. If it's worth the risk, let's go to the cinemas. So it's not as if people are not willing to come out, but the film should be worthwhile. The film should be worth their taking the risk. And I just hope that this fear factor dies down, or at least reduces, because everything is about how the public perceives going out to the cinemas. If they feel safe and secure, they will come out. So one thing is clear, that they are waiting to watch movies on the big screen, and that you cannot take away. I think that will continue. Probably January or February, we'll be in a better position. The conditions will be better, and therefore then we'll see not just the capacities going back to 100%, the curfews going away, and collections bigger and better than they used to be. I had predicted this last time during the lockdown also, that we get to see collections of the kind rarely seen. And with Spider-Man, it has been proven that a first week, 8-day week of almost 140 crore, it's not a joke. I mean, which Hollywood film does that kind of business? Which means that all that talk that people have gotten used to or habituated to watching films in the comforts of their homes on streaming platforms, that doesn't hold true. They will watch films on streaming platforms, but they will definitely go to the cinemas and watch films on the big screen also.
Well, so it depends on the movie. You use the term, Komal Nahata used the term of event movies. Kamal Gianchandani, do you have a big lineup of event movies? Does 2022 have that kind of a lineup which will bring people in? And what is your comment on the closing time or the closing gap between premiering in a movie hall and making it to an OTT platform? So, for example, Sooryavanshi was available on OTT platforms within, a little more than a month and a half after it premiered. So, are you worried about a section of people who would say that, hey, let's wait it out and then watch it when it comes right in our living room?
Tamanna, it's a good question. Your first, question on whether we have enough blockbuster films or event films. Yes, answer is yes. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, films releasing every week. And every month we have films which have potential to become at least one or two films which have potential to go through the roof in terms of box office. I would also like to add to what Komalji was saying, that people would be careful about the films that they select. And, he's enormously experienced. I value his comments, but I beg to differ slightly because a lot of mid-level films like Dr. Manadu in Tamil, a slew of Punjabi hits, which were fairly small. And I'm talking October, November. This is before Sooryavanshi came out and created a new sort of momentum at the box office. A lot of these films exceeded expectations. In fact, they performed at pre-COVID level, and some of them actually exceeded pre-COVID level. So I think in Hindi, unfortunately, the mid-level films we've had since Sooryavanshi have not performed as per expectation, and maybe that's the reason we have this narrative, this inference that maybe mid-level films would not perform. But I think we are just one hit film away from changing even this narrative. Like Komalji said, that this whole debate on whether habits will change, whether number of films will reduce, all of that has become void now because, those debates or those apprehensions were ill-founded. I think this debate or this narrative will also soon come to an end. The other question that you had was on the windows. As a short-term measure, firstly, I mean, before I get into the answer, I must give you the backdrop that window is a sacrosanct model which has been, window is basically a trade jargon, which is the gap between theatrical release and release on streaming or television or any other platform. And this model is a very strong, solid model. One of the big reason why film industry is doing the kind of box office numbers that we see today, or the kind of numbers that we are discussing in this panel. One big reason for that is windows, and it's a model which has been prevalent for decades, and not just in India, but it's a global practice. And it's a mutually beneficial model. It's not just the exhibitors who benefit from it, but it's also the producers who benefit, and in a counterintuitive fashion, even the streaming platforms and television platforms actually benefit from windows. That said, because of the damage which has been caused by COVID, as a short-term measure, we've agreed to shorten the window from 8 weeks, what it used to be 8 weeks pre-COVID, we have brought it down to 4 weeks. From 1st April 2022, and there's a broad agreement with most producers, most large producers who have films lined up in 2022 calendar year. and with the rest of distributors, producers, we are in active talks. From 1st April 2022, we will go back to 8-week window. The erstwhile 8-week window will come back in motion. That's the plan at this point in time. And, I would like to share that uh, uh, while it's seen as a conflict between theaters on one side and streaming and television on the other side, but in reality, this is something which will benefit the business at an overall level. You've seen the kind of curiosity, the kind of excitement which has been created because of theatrical release and success of Sooryavanshi, Spider-Man, and now 83. All of this will translate to huge, massive eyeballs when they release on streaming platforms and television platforms. So it's a win-win for everyone. A film which comes out in theaters benefits every platform, every subsequent platform which shows the film in the downstream. And the benefit is much more than showing it directly. But going back to your Windows question, we will go back to 8-week window on 1st April 2022.
So that's some piece of news that you've given us here, Mr. Gianchandani, and an important one that post-April, don't expect for a shorter wait before, that movie hits your streaming platform. Mr. Dwivedi, I want to follow up on what you said earlier, and I found it quite interesting that from the content creator's perspective, you are now looking at a wider platter. Is it sort of a challenge to keep a balance between what will go on OTT, what will work on OTT, and what will work in the movie halls?
Not really. So if you look at the creative dimension, I think there is a certain genre of movie that lends itself far more easily to streaming platforms, and that's easy to discern. But I think it's the economics that really makes all the difference. I think films that have larger cost of production, and I would give a ballpark of anywhere between 60-80 crores plus, typically tends to benefit more from having a theatrical release in conjunction with streaming and satellite sales, and we have seen that with films such as Bell Bottom, etc. And increasingly, there will be a significant opportunity for creators to wait on the theatrical window being available for a movie to be showcased as it was, as they say, intended to be seen before it goes on to other streaming platform. But that is not to say that there isn't a steady and a large supply quotient as far as the streaming services are concerned. I'd hazard a guess that there will still be a large number of movies that will find their way direct to streaming platform. And I'm not just meaning mid-budget or low-budget movies. There could even be significant high-budget movies. And if you look at the trend in the West, when you look at Disney talking about releasing movies on Disney Plus at the same time as theatrical releases, you look at Warner Brothers doing HBO Max releases at the same time as the global releases happening. I think this trend is here to stay. And I think if the producer sees the economic value of being able to monetize the movie on a streaming platform directly, I think it'll start making a lot of sense. Just going back a little bit to what Kamal also referred, and I agree with him that the windowing pattern is a well-proven methodology that has worked well for the industry, allowed us for efficient monetization as well as very efficient distribution. The fact remains is that these windows have tend to be fairly variant in the recent times, and I do expect that there might be shifting trends in that area as well. You will find increasingly that the windows will start getting squeezed a little bit, while we hope that they will remain where they are for maximization of the economic incentive to producers and distributors and exhibitors. But I do think that that's something that is up in the air and not fully determined yet. And a lot will depend on the future, which is unpredictable at this stage, on the level of restrictions that the government imposes in terms of number of theaters being allowed to be open, timings, and so on and so forth.
So wait a minute. So 1 minute, Mr. Dwivedi, are you saying that the reversal to the 8-week window from April 2022 is still under discussion? It's not a given yet. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm not a spokesperson for the industry, so it would be unfair for me to make a comment at that stage. It is my personal belief as an industry participant that that is something that is being discussed and not totally concluded yet.
Okay. Okay, okay, Komal, I want you to come in on that, a brief comment on that, and I also want you to give us an overview of 2022. I mean, there's no doubt that if there is a good movie in the in the cinema, and people really want to see that story and those actors on screen, they're going to come out, they're going to pay for it, and people are really sick of sitting at home. Do you think that there's going to be enough on the plate for moviegoers in 2022?
I don't think it will just be enough. It will be more than enough. And we are getting a glimpse of it currently. Last week, we had two major releases, both of which proved blockbusters. Spider-Man, No Way Home, and Pushpa. This week, we have 83, which is a huge film, a budget of some 285 crore. Next week, there's Jersey, eagerly awaited again. Following that is RRR, again, one of the costliest films ever made. And then there is Radhe Shyam. So I think there's such a huge lineup of films that there is more than enough for the audience. And I have absolutely no doubt that for the coming 6 to 8 months at least, there's never going to be felt a shortage of content. In fact, films will be eating into each other's collections because of the limited number of cinemas we have and therefore limited showcasing which each film will get. Currently, today's week, I mean the week that has started today, because 83 was the new release, it was very tough for the exhibitors to decide how to divide the shows between 83 in its first week and Pushpa and Spider-Man in their second weeks. It was so heartbreaking for the exhibitors and equally heartbreaking for the distributors and producers of those films, you know. So this is going to be a continuous feature because there is such a backlog of films. And as for this window of 8 weeks, what you wanted to know, I also feel that producers and exhibitors, they must be in the process of negotiation, but I think they will come back to the old formula of releasing films 8 weeks after the theatrical release, because as Kamalji rightly said, it has been a tried and tested format which has worked well for everybody. Of course, the smaller films which don't do well, for them, waiting for 8 weeks becomes a little too much because then they lose out on the revenue from digital. But you can't have individual periods, you know. It has to be a common window for all the films. So some stand to gain, some stand to lose. But I don't think that would change. I think I tend to agree more with Kamalji that producers would fall in line and agree with what the multiplexes and the cinemas want, an 8-week exclusive window for cinemas.
Well, that's going to be one interesting story to follow. As we wrap up, Mr. Gupta, I just have one question for you. Are ticket prices going to be more expensive in the new year? More hikes coming in your view? Or will they now temper down as hopefully capacities go back to 100%?
Bigger movie will always have a higher pricing, and you know all the blockbusters which are coming up. And whenever we have a shortage of seats, like as Mr. Komalji said or Kamal said, you know, there are overlapping stage where, you know, the number of movies which are playing right now, I mean, the number of seats available ratio is not sufficient. So considering that situation, the current pricing will continue for some time, but of course it will taper down at some point of time and, you know, based on the demand situation. So it's always a balance, you know, what a consumer can pay and what we can charge. It cannot be always high. But of course, in the current scenario, it is higher because of the blockbuster movies released one after another.
Tamanna, can I step in with a comment here?
Yes, very quickly, please. Very quickly. I just have about a minute.
Sure, I understand. I'll be quick. So, you know, we practice variable ticket pricing, which means on different days, within a day, different show timings. And then in subsequent weeks, ticket price keeps tapering off. And within different cinemas, there are different ticket prices. So the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, when you say a cinema is charging 1,600, 1,800, you're referring to a particular theater and probably in a premium location, probably the best, most expensive seat. Because within an auditorium, we've got recliners, regular seats, all sorts of variety, right? And the whole idea of this multiplex concept
course,
is to give
yes.
choice,
Yes.
variable ticket pricing, different offering. So we've got something for everyone. Our average ticket price is no more than 250 rupees, which I think is extremely modest. And I'm talking
Sure.
about the biggest chain, which is national chains like PVR and INOX. The average ticket price is not more than
Yes.
250, which is fairly reasonable. So I don't
Yeah.
think there's a problem with ticket prices.
All
Uh,
right.
they seem
All right.
high
So,
when you go on.
okay. I think that's yeah. No, so a big movie on a weekend. Yes, I mean if you have the time to go see a movie 2 weeks later on a Tuesday afternoon, then good for you. But it's great. It's great if movie halls make money. It's great if people go back to the cinema. So get ready to grab your popcorn in 2022. With that, I'll have to wrap. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.